Thank you for inviting me today. Really great to have a chat. Such a big group, actually. It's good to see you've got a good turnout. I'm joining you from Awabakal land up here in New South Wales, we now know as Newcastle region. And I understand that some of you will have probably heard from us directly before the Every Age Counts campaign. Some of you will have heard of us, but some might be coming quite fresh. So what I'm going to go through today is just some of the basics of why we're campaigning against ageism, how we're doing that. And then, of course, finishing with some ways that you or your organisation can get involved in the campaign as well. So I'm just going to bring up my slides. Is that up now? Yep, cool. This is where we like to start. We say, what would an Australia without ageism look like? This is our vision. We want to see in a society where every person is valued, connected, and respected regardless of age. And we have a pledge that we ask people to take as individuals or organisations as well. And it's also important for me to be clear at this point too that this is our vision, that everybody in society is valued, connected, and respected regardless of age. Our focus is on the older people and the impacts of ageism on older people. This is our founding coalition, just so you can see some of those who have been involved in campaign from the very start, both individuals and organisations. This is our current steering group. This is our governance group. And this is our long list of member organisations that we have. And I look forward to, in the next few weeks, being able to use smaller text and perhaps having some of your own organisation, more of your organisations on this call as members as well. I think I might need to start using 2 slides soon. What would an Australia without ageism look like? If some of you have been to our website previously, you'll see a video on the website voiced by Brian Brown, where he goes through some of these points around, you know, the same qualifications. It won't take older people longer to find work. There will be no more outdated stereotypes of what older people can and can't do. Some of these are quite cultural, but others have real material impacts on people's lives as well. This is how we understand what ageism is. Ageism against older people is a stereotyping, discrimination, and mistreatment based solely upon age. It comes from widespread social acceptance of negative attitudes and beliefs about the value of older people and later life. Ageism experienced in different ways by different people and groups in the community, and there's a lot more ageism in Australia than most people realise. We also find it quite important to distinguish between 2 different types of ageism. One is the stuff that ends up on the front page. It's very easy to recognise. That's the malevolent ageism. That's the neglect and abuse, the intentional mistreatment of people. But one that's probably harder to see and harder to fight as well, but just as important, is the benevolent ageism. And so it can often be delivered with positive intentions, but it comes from narrow assumptions, negative stereotypes about older people and later life, can lead to overprotection and controlling responses that ultimately take away people's individuality and their own agency, and it undermines dignity, capability, and quality of life. How do we change attitudes? We started our campaign with this piece of research called The Drivers of Ageism. We worked with Urbis on this. It involved literature review, it involved national survey, and it's involved a series of focus groups to really underpin where we knew what ageism was. We know that it occurs, but where does it come from? So how do we start to approach it as its root causes? We found a number of sometimes conflicting responses that we need to respond to. There was a lack of awareness of ageism, but when made aware, most people do care about ageism. They do. They say, yeah, that's not okay. However, most say, well, what you've explained is not okay, but I don't think it's that much of a problem. Or other people are very motivated and say it is a big problem and we need to do something about it. We found that age is not a number, and by that we asked people, what is old? And the responses were quite typically 10 to 15 years older than whatever I am. And that's for somebody who's 30, for somebody who's in their 60s or even in their 70s, will typically say, I'm not old, that's not me, that's not how I feel. And it's hard to unpick that. One of the reasons for that is that our negative perceptions about getting older and trying to push it away from ourselves is because we have a fear of getting older ourselves. And that fear is often based on misconceptions about what it means to be older. We don't want to be that. We too often see the negative pictures of it, and so we want to disassociate. And that's also why one of the key indicators of whether somebody holds an ageist attitude or belief is their level of personal connection with older people in the workplace, in their personal lives, socially, or in their families. The more contact we have with older people, the less likely we are to hold negative attitudes. And we also looked at the settings in which it was thought important for us to address ageism. You can look at our research on our website here. But this is where we started when we were looking at the sort of the policy domains to look at. This was our long list. And here are the ones coloured in greens are the ones that we've been able to make progress on so far. Political leadership, work, aged care.
Program that we just run for the Afghani community. Parenting programs where we're helping them work out how to...
Magda, could you please mute yourself? Thank you.
Who are being bullied. And
Sorry.
make it language specific, make it culture specific.
Thanks. And you can look at our policy documents on our website as well. I won't go into too much there, but one of the things you know that besides that policy work, and of course we work with our partners in that, we also need to, and where we can make a greater contribution as a campaign, is to have a community-driven campaign that works to change attitudes in the community. That's a way of, over time, and it is a long-term commitment, but changing attitudes, building pressure for policy change as well. And this is our understanding of what it takes to build a social movement. We have the broader community. That's Australia. We identify that for us as the Australian community. We have the crowd, who are people who are kind of receptive to our ideas, or we're talking about the congregation, where it comes into people who are, yeah, we agree, and something should be done. We have the committed people who are starting to do it, and they're willing to do things on behalf of the campaign to help it grow and progress. We have the core, and they're like the real activists who we know out there in the community have taken this to heart. They're willing to learn skills they can do to change people's attitudes and change even get involved in political advocacy if that's their thing, and they're willing to give that a go. We need to take people, we have a big community. We need to bring people further along, and more people into that core. And how do we do that? Well, it's a bit of a journey. We ask people to take the quiz. This is on our website. It's the Am I Ageist quiz. It's not going to tell people you're wrong, that's bad, sorry, it's the wrong thing to think. It really just it encourages people to have to reflect. And it does that also by often starting to break down some of those myths about what it means to be older. Real Old publication is the same sort of thing. It's a magazine form which presents some of those myths and says, actually, here's reality. If you want to have a look at this, it's also on our website, but we can mail, I should say, in ordinary days, we can mail copies of this to your organisation if you have a place, a waiting room, a sitting room, a reception, or to have it around the office, in the lunchroom. I say ordinarily because they're all currently in our head office, which no one can access in Sydney. So, but please get in contact and we'll try and organise something. We ask people to sign the pledge as the first step towards showing a commitment to addressing ageism. and that can be done on our website. But we need to go a bit deeper. So we did a research project with the University of Sydney around reframing aging. And that started from a position of understanding the language we use, the way we talk about getting older and being older. Typically, the way we do that now too often reinforces negative stereotypes, reinforces ageism. So we need to go, how do we start to unwind that? And we did that again with a series of working groups around the country. We were in Adelaide, Brockhampton, we went down to Hobart, and then we did some around Sydney as well. And we started to look at what are some of the ways that we are talking about being older, let's say. What are the ways that we can frame that differently and just talk about the same topic, but talk about it in a way that starts to undermine ageism? We started to develop some of these framings that you can see here on the table. Again, I won't go into too much detail now. I'm happy to chat at another time with anybody who's interested. I just wanted to finish on an activity that we have coming up. This is sort of consuming us all at the moment. We're planning Ageism Awareness Day for the 1st of October. And many of you will recognise that as International Day of Older Persons. We've chosen that day to have Ageism Awareness Day. Some of the activities that we're planning for this, we're producing an advertisement around highlighting the existence of ageism and the impacts of it. We'll have some media activity based on some research that we'll be releasing around the instances of people experiencing ageism, whether they did anything about it. We want to talk about that gap because what we know is that not very many people do anything about it. That might be because they don't recognise what they experience. They know it was bad, they might not recognise it as ageism, so they can't quite put their finger on what the solution is. It might be that they didn't know what steps of recourse they had. So we want to talk about some of those and have a bit of discussion around that. We'll have social media activity, and that's ranges from some social media, Facebook squares and things like that your organisations may wish to also share on that day. Please get in touch if you do, and we'll put you on the circulation distribution list for that. We've got Ageism Awareness Day online launch. So that's something that anybody can attend. It'll be at 10 a.m. If you go to our website, you'll be able to find a link to register for that, or I might circulate that after this meeting if that's okay too, to this list. We're also asking our supporters and supporting organisations to host a morning tea on the day. So we're producing a number of resources, some discussion guides and some activities. I think you can probably not quite ready to announce, but I'll let you know that Maggie Beer has provided a recipe for the day, and that will be the signature recipe for the morning teas. So we're very proud to be working with her. Actually, I should mention also Monica Trappick is giving us her time for the online launch to be involved there. So it's host the morning tea, and then we'll also, again, in brackets, it's not hasn't been announced yet, but we will be announcing our grassroots training for our supporters there, and that's really based on that that reframing work that was done with the University of Sydney. So we're training people to tell their stories, tell their own stories out in their own communities, to respond to instances of ageism, and to really start to undermine ageism in their own communities through the way that they interact with their family and communities and workplaces and so on. You can join us. You can join us as an individual. You can go to the website, sign the pledge, and you'll hear more updates about what things that we're doing and things that you can do. We ask organisations to also join as organisational members. There's details on our website about how to do that. We also ask organisations when they join to take the pledge. And I showed this at the top, but we can send you some files to print out for this. It's a nice thing to put on the wall or to hold up on your social media. That we pledge to stand for a world without ageism. Cool. Thank you.
Oh, Joel, thank you so very much. That really was very inspiring. And I think something we can all think about there is so much of the hard work is actually already done thanks to your campaign. It really is quite remarkable how many resources and how many examples of really good practice are already there for people to tap into. You don't have to start and think, how am I going to solve this? Because you've got a lot of information there already. I did wonder whether you might describe briefly any of the community-driven campaigns that are already in action. So just maybe one that comes to mind, doesn't have to be too big or too small, just something that where an organisation has done something and kind of how that began and how that's progressed.
Sure. Instead of a small one, actually, I should have given a shout out to the local government sector in Victoria, because not through our initiative, through their own initiative, have come through and through a range of different angles and signed up and supported the Every Age Counts campaign. So those of you in local government might look to the Municipal Association of Victoria has signed up to the campaign, rolling out a number of supporting materials and ways to get involved. There was also a group in the Eastern Metro region who started a bit earlier and really have run a campaign over the last, I'm going to say 6 months or so, or maybe longer. Time flies, who knows these days. But some of their campaigns have included things like in local libraries, the screensaver on all the computers have been turned over to a message about every age counts. They've done, some of the councils have said, well, we need to do more than publicising the campaign. They started running their own training amongst their staff based on some of the research and materials we've been able to provide with them around what it means, what ageism means, and what does that mean for us as an organisation, and so, those sorts of things. We've got, for example, Brisbane Primary Health Network developing a project around ageism appropriate language for home care workers, for example. So that's a very exciting project we're hoping to see come through. Yeah, so they're just a few of the kind of initiatives.
Oh, that's really exciting. I wondered whether, in terms of the quiz that you're running, whether there's any preliminary results or the things that you're finding from there, and are you kind of have you got an upshot on things that you're learning, things that are coming in that you didn't expect from that data?
Well, the quiz is not so much an instrument of our own data collection. We do have that possibility with the quiz, but to be honest, it's, you know, it's self-selecting and that sort of thing. So we really encourage that as a way of encouraging people to be reflective of their own attitudes and beliefs. Yeah, some of the unexpected things, I guess, you know, some of the unexpected things are where we see ageism pop up and people respond to it positively, which we weren't expecting, because so often it's not talked about and not acknowledged or even pushed back. And I'm going to talk about, in the last couple of days, I don't know if any of you have seen the bit of noise around Triple J. Tweeted, the Triple J tweet account tweeted about you know, having a bit of banter with Double J, which is, you know, for a slightly older audience, you know, slightly older audience than Triple J, you know, about how does it feel to age out of, you know, the youth demographic. And the former presenters, musicians, lots of people just said, hey, that's not okay. This is your audience. We're really not interested in this older people versus younger people thing. And that, you know, a lot of people pointing out how they are reinforcing ageism there. And, you know, if somebody who's so inclined as an employer sees that kind of attitude and go, well, we want someone cutting edge for this job, that must mean somebody younger. You know, it was really great for that kind of thing to be pushed back against, I guess, you know, amongst an audience that we probably haven't had very much interaction with at all.
Yeah,
that's really encouraging, isn't it?
That's interesting. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Louise.
That's okay. I wasn't sure, Joel, whether you could see the questions in the chat, so I was just going to read one of those out in case you hadn't, from Rod. Just asking, how does every age count connecting with the primary prevention of elder abuse networks in Victoria that are taking a particular interest in addressing ageism as an underlying driver of elder abuse? Is there opportunity for improved collaboration?
Yeah, so elder abuse is, you might have noticed it's not, when I put up a list of policy areas that are a priority for us, it didn't appear. And yet still, and obviously it's an area where, which comes up, and we are approached by people who are working in that space, and the cross-cutting of ageism as a cause of elder abuse is so obvious, I think. So we do work with both in Victoria and around the country, different people working on elder abuse and different networks on what can be done around that collaboration. It's probably something for, that we can always things that we can do more, within the resources that we have as a small team, but we're always looking to support those who are working in that space who want to talk about ageism as well.
Could I just quickly add to that for a sec? Sorry to jump in on Joel's, just as a representative of one of those networks. Joel's probably not across the fact that I have been liaising with Marlene, and we're working on a project which I'll be presenting on later today, which involves 4 of those networks. So that might partially answer some of that question later, Rod, or I'd be happy to talk to you offline as well.
Thank you very much, Michelle. We had done a bit of a scoping exercise across the Southern Metro region to see what organisations were doing in the space of ageism, and certainly elder abuse is very strong in terms of initiatives that are happening in this space. So I won't talk to all of those, but we will be providing some resources after this session in the coming week or so, that will describe some of the projects that we know about, but certainly we don't claim to know about all of them. So yeah, it'd be really great to use this opportunity to springboard, to learn more about what each of us are doing, and learn from others, so that we're not reinventing the wheel.
I should too acknowledge that Elder Abuse Action Australia are one of our member organisations. I've seen a comment from Kath about the quiz being used for all new staff to start when they start at the organisation. That's really great. That's exactly the ways that we hope the materials and resources we produce are helpful to you as well. But please also, tell us you're using them, because we like to know how they're useful. Some people, there might be others we can then recommend it to, but also it means we know what we need to produce more of.
Joel, I just wanted to ask very quickly, and this might be a bit annoying because it was one of your slides, your second last slide. You had some information there about, I think it was about reframing some conversations. Is that easily accessible? I just thought.
Hold on, I'll bring this up.
Sorry, we had just a few minutes. So I just thought it was a really good slide that I'm guessing people can use back in their workplace. Is that something that you recommend?
Is this the slide that you're referring to? Is that up now?
Yeah.
I mean, so this is this is still high level, This is like what the language device is. What I think would be useful doesn't quite exist yet, but we're working on something for that grassroots training that I mentioned. Is some practice for recognising a particular frame in a way some information is presented, and recognising the opportunity to present it differently, and then applying these kind of frames to it. So I talk about mentioned this grassroots training. So it's an online training package. It's designed for our supporters to learn how to become reframers, really, in their own communities. But there's going to be units in it that might be available with all different applications. For example, the early units are all about what is ageism, and how do we recognise ageism. That might be useful for organisations to run, and particularly some stuff around this framing and using language correctly. There might be some that are useful. So although they will exist in this online training package, we're very happy to provide them to you in ways that you might be able to use or adapt for your own purposes.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking we're all here because we work in aged care and, clearly are not ageist, but I think, we can all have those subconscious accidental ageisms, and certainly reframing conversations to a more positive strength-based approach. I think that would be really, really handy.
And I mentioned very briefly that out of Brisbane, there might be a resource coming out soon. And I know they will be keen to share that too. So keep an eye out for that.
Fantastic. Now, are there any more questions? I can see that Rod McIntosh from the Frankston Mornington PCP has put a resource in the chat. So if everyone can go and have a look at that, that's fantastic. Thank you, Rod. Now, are there any other questions at all for Joel? No, pop it in the chat. Joel, we do appreciate you coming and filling in at the last minute. We do appreciate that. Thank you very much.